Good morning, everybody. Too loud. So you can take your seat. We start in 2 minutes, okay? 2 minuti e iniziamo. Sorry, I start to warm up because I have to speak in English today. So, potete accomodare con noi. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 7th edition of Europe in Italy. A big applause. Thank you so much. European Election 2024. I am Saira, as you know me, and together with my colleague Alice, we will be moderating the entire conference. Both Alice and I are members of the Association Erasmus Student Network Urbino. Every year we have the pleasure of celebrating the Europe Day together with the whole Urbino student community, thanks to the constant support of the University of Urbino, and this year also of Radio Urca. We have the president, Andrea. We collaborate with the university on and ongoing with a fruitful basis since its inception. Moreover, this year we have once again obtained the non-burdensome patronage for this conference from the city of Urbino. One of the reasons why we are here today is because we want to give the credits that you deserve, to make you feel how together we can be the difference in this world, and how diversity is not something to judge, but something that enriches us. Your voice counts as you do. Therefore, there is no better way to start this day than with the words of the institution that follow and support us on our path. Therefore, I leave the floor to the magnificent director, Giorgio Calcagnini. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. When I joined the faculty at the University of Urbino in back 1988, I was responsible for the Erasmus exchanges for the Department of Economics, and at that time it was very complicated in a way to let the student understand the importance of moving around the other European countries, not only to learn another language, but to understand the way of life of other countries. And I think the Erasmus program is probably one of the best and more successful European programs. So I'm very supportive to this initiative and all the other exchanges initiatives. And I hope you really enjoy this particular meeting, but I really hope that you will have the experience, the possibility, the chances to go abroad and meet other colleagues from the country where you're going, or where you're planning to go, or other students from other countries meeting in the same university. So again, thank you very much to all the students from the University of Urbino and from the Erasmus network at the national level to be here and for organizing this meeting. Thank you very much.
Again, me. So, we want also to thank the people who couldn't be with us today, like Professor Walter Balduini, Erasmus delegate of the university, Dr. Simona Pigrucci, director of the International Mobility Office, and also the National Board of ESN Italy, Gaia Tamasi, that is the president, and the vice president, Valentina. We are sure that somehow they are supporting us with our journey today. So I leave the floor to my colleague Alice, and thank you again.
Hi everyone. I also want to thank all of you for being here today because it really means a lot for us. As Saira mentioned before, this is the 7th edition of Europe in Italy, a conference that as ESN Urbino organize every year to celebrate the Europe Day, that is the 9th of May, actually it's tomorrow. And this particular day was chosen in memory of when Robert Schuman in 1950 presented the plan for the economic cooperation, which was the first important step that led to the birth of the European Union. And this institution has changed the lives of so many citizens, which is why we keep to celebrate this anniversary each year by investigating the meaning of European citizenship and highlighting the opportunities it offers. To do so, this year we have 3 special guests who will bring us on a journey to discover the Union and European citizenship. We have Matilde, the liaison officer of ESN Italy for Youth and European Affairs, who will hold the speech, The Future of the Erasmus Plus program. We have the Professor James Newell from the Department of Economics, Society and Politics with the speech, Your Vote, Your Europe, Understanding the European Parliament Election. The Professor Nicola Giannelli from the same department as James Newell with the speech, Why the European Parliament Should Play a Crucial Role. For those who are following via Instagram Lives or YouTube streaming, if you have any kind of question, you can write them in the comment, and at the end of each speech, we will give you 10 minutes in which the speaker will answer your question. So I think I can leave the floor to Matilde.
Hi everyone. So I just want to thank you first, Alice, Saira, and all the members of ESN Urbino for inviting me today. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to talk to you about European election and what ESN Italy can do to promote and support the European election and in general the Erasmus Plus program. So, as Alice already said, I'm the liaison officer of ESN Italy for Youth and European Affairs. And so, this year I'm gonna promote and support European election by doing vademecum and trying to explain to everyone why it's so important to vote for this election. First of all, a quick recap about what are the European elections. So, European election, as the professor Will said after, will be during the weekend of the 6th and the 9th of June 2024. In particular, in Italy, there will be from the afternoon of the 8th till the like 11 p.m. of the 9th of June. We will elect 720 members of the European Parliament, and so these deputies will represent the interest of the European citizens, and also they will vote for the laws that are going to impact directly on our life. In particular, they will vote for laws that will involve aspects such as sustainability, but also rights and mobility programs for the European students in general. So they will impact our life, and in particular, they will impact the Erasmus Plus program. But also, I want to do a quick recap about what is it, the Erasmus Plus program. So Erasmus Plus program is a program that is born in 1987, and it's made by the European Commission nowadays. And today, Erasmus Plus program is not only considering for the education of people, but also for the trainerships, work activities, solidarity corps, and all other stuff. So the opportunities that the Erasmus Plus programs led with it are a lot. And so I said before that the Erasmus Plus program is supported by the European Commission, and the elections are for the European Parliament. So why should we talk about the Erasmus Plus program in the European elections, and why it's so important? So first of all, even if the Erasmus Plus program is led by the European Commission, there is a strict link between the two institutions. So the European Parliament and the European Commission doesn't work separately, but they work together, and they do laws, and they improve European Union in general together by making decisions together. In particular, the European Commission will manage the budget and set priorities, but at the same time, the European Parliament will have a big influence on the European Commission, in particular because the European Parliament will approve the President of the European Commission, the nomination of the President of the European Commission, and also the nomination of the several commissioners that will compose the European Commission. So even if the decisions are made by the European Commission, at the beginning of the process there is the European Parliament. Even more, European Plus program has a budget that has to be used in 7 years. In particular, this budget has to be used between the 2021 and 2027. So we will still have 3 years of budgets to use, but at the same time, we have also to understand that the Parliament made the budget of every year. So even if European Commission has decided that between the 2024 and the 2027, the Erasmus Plus program must use 26 billion, at the same time is the Parliament that every year decides how many of these billions should be used for the program. Even more, we can say also that the European Parliament must check on what is the work of the European Commission. So they must check that the work is made in the interest of the European citizens, and in the case of the Erasmus Plus program, or in the interest of the Erasmus Plus students and Erasmus Plus users, we can say. And so also in this case we can notice that European Commission is not free to do whatever they want and are strictly linked with the European Parliament. So that's why European elections also for the Erasmus Plus program are so important. In general, as I already said, the Erasmus Plus has a 7-year strategy. So as I already said several times, the strategy for these 7 years are from the 2021 to the 2027. And in this strategy, they set goals, the budget, and we have to understand what is the future of this strategy. So what will happen after the 2027? In particular, for what are the goals? For this 7-year strategy, we can say that European Commission will try to build a more inclusive program. So we'll start to think about solution to let everyone to have the possibility to go on a mobility program, whatever it is. And so the opportunity must be given to everyone, and so they have to understand how to do it, and they hope that they will join this goal in 2027. At the same time, they are trying to do the digital transition. We learned a lot about digital transition during these years, in particular after the pandemic, and so also these aspects has been included in the strategy of the Erasmus Plus program. And then at the end, the Green Erasmus. So we know that sustainability and environment are topics that are really important during these days. So also the mobility programs should be green and sustainable for the travelers. So what's the future of the strategy and what's the future of the Erasmus Plus program? So we don't know, because we cannot imagine a future after 2027. But at the same time, what we can say is that in the electoral program of the parties that are participating to the European election, Erasmus Plus is nominated very few times. They all talk about young people, they speak about being more inclusive with young people, sustain and improve young people and the opportunities, but Erasmus Plus is a word that appears very, very few times. So that's why I'm here, actually, because as young people we can support and we have the duty to go and vote in order to let our voice to be heard. In particular, as ESN, so Erasmus Student Network, we are trying to do a great job. Don't know if you know what ESN is, but few dates. ESN, such as Erasmus Student Network, is an association of volunteers, so we are all volunteers, and we try to support and improve the rights of the people on mobility, not only the people that are here for the Erasmus Plus program, but all the students that are in Italy to do an exchange program and a mobility program. And at the same time, it doesn't exist only ESN Italy, but there is ESN also in other countries. So there are other volunteers in Germany, in France, in Spain, and not only in Italy, because, for example, there is also ESN Jordan, ESN Iceland, etc. And so we are trying to support in each country the international students. It's not only, as some people think, it's not only about parties and travels and all this kind of stuff, but as an association we are trying to promote also the rights of the people in mobility, both in the cities, so in the local aspects, both in the European aspects in general. We are also trying to do our work for the European election in order to promote European election. In fact, given our role of advocating for international mobility and the rights of international people, ESN plays also an essential part in supporting the active citizenship. In particular, we have seen with the election of 2019 that thanks to our campaign, more people went to vote. In general, more people went to vote in 2019 compared to 2014, but also our campaign have done a great impact. So this year we promoted again another campaign in order to promote the European election, and you can see the name in the slides. So the campaign is You Vote, and we tried to write vademecum in order to explain to the students why it's important to vote and also how they can vote. In particular, people in mobility sometimes think that it's mandatory to go back to their country in order to vote, but this is not the case, because you can vote also if you are in mobility without going back and spending money to your country. Also, the same thing can happen for students that are not studying in their region or in their hometown, because at the same time they can vote also even if they are in another region. And this year is the first time that we can do it. So, as I said, as ESN we try to advocate for international mobility and also to support the active citizens. And if you think this can be taught as a cycle, that can happen, because if you go on mobility, you also increase your sense of belongingness to European Union. And if you feel more close to the European Union and not only something that happens really far from us, you can participate actively to the European election. And if you participate actively to the European election, then also the European Parliament will listen to your voice more and more and more days after days. So all my presentation, all my speech, I think that can be reduced in that the fact that if we understand that European Union is not something that it's really far from us, and we go and vote for the election, we can also change what is the future, and we can also improve the Erasmus Plus program, that is a great opportunity that is given to all the students, and not only because also adults can participate actually to the European Plus program. So that's it. Here is my email if you have some question or other things, and thanks for listening. Don't know if you have question now.
Thank you. Yeah, you can keep your position. So thank you, Matilde, for your incredible speech. And now if we are able to see also the questions, if there are some questions online, or if the audience has some question, please come to my left and we give the microphone. Please raise your hand, don't be shy. Sophia, come.
Hi. I wanted to ask, we know that ESN is recognized as an association in all Europe, also in the Parliament of Europe, is one of the few that is recognized by the European Parliament. Has anyone mentioned us in their campaign during this year? Do they talk about us and how they can improve our work in order to make our work better? I don't know if I...
Okay, so actually, yes, we are recognized by the European Commission, as you said, and in particular, we are supported by the European Commission because ESN has been founded by the European communities back in the years, and has been founded in order to talk about the Erasmus program and the mobility program. What we can do as volunteer, as local section, is to start talking more about and with the institutions, because I think that we tend to do is to being focused on the people that are in our city, but in order to improve in general the opportunities of everyone, we should start to talk more with the institutions. The dialogue is the best thing that we can do. We can propose things, even if at the beginning institution maybe will say, no, we cannot support you. At the end, if you talk and if you let them understand why your work is so important, after that, they will support you and everything will improve. So I think that the key word is the dialogue between us and the institutions. Don't know if the answer...
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So in live, we don't have question, at least from YouTube. On Instagram? No? Okay. So guys, if you want, feel free to have any kind of question. Don't think you're stupid. There are no stupid questions, as we used to say.
How many of you are going to vote for the European election? Are you over 18 or not? You going to vote? Okay.
Also, Professor, if you want to have some question. Okay, no problem. Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Wow, and that's a responsibility, no? Okay, so thank you, Matilde. I think we are all right with that for your speech. And please, Matilde Quaglia, liaison officer of ESN Urbino. Therefore, we go to the next guest, Professor Newell. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very honoured to be here. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm British, but I did acquire Italian citizenship last February, which I'm very pleased about, and so I will be voting in the European Parliament elections. I'm also involved in a political party in Britain called the Rejoin EU Party, and I'm very pleased that at the London Assembly elections held on the 2nd of May, we managed 2.5%, which may not sound a great deal, but on the other hand, it does mean that we are on an upward trajectory. So we feel very pleased about that. And as part of the campaign for this election, I was invited for an interview by a new, unfortunately Eurosceptical, Brexit-supporting television station called GB News. They asked me to comment on the Commission's programme or proposal for a new youth mobility scheme between the United Kingdom and the EU. And I noticed after I'd made my comments in the comment box below my appearance, somebody wrote, "Your guest, Jim Newell, is everything that is wrong with this country. His crazy views are not shared by the vast majority of people, and he should not be given a platform peddling his nonsense." So I decided to take that as a mark of success in that particular context. So I want to address in my remarks three issues. First of all, I want to look at the role of the European Parliament in the process of EU policy making and what that means for the European Union as a whole. Secondly, I want to add to the remarks of my previous colleague about why participating in the June elections is important. And then thirdly, I want to say something about the outcome or the possible outcome and consequences of the elections that are taking place in June. So if we start with the European Parliament in European Union policy making, first of all, I want to begin by drawing your attention to an article that is very well known among political scientists that was published a long time ago in 1980. It's an article by Karl-Heinz Rieff and Hermann Schmidt called 9 Second-Order Elections, a conceptual framework for the analysis of European election results. And in this article, they argued that European Parliament elections were second-order elections in the sense that there are elections other than those that are decisive for the allocation of political power in a country. Therefore, elections other than national parliamentary elections. And as well as being second-order elections, they were also national elections in the sense that they are elections whose organisations and outcomes in the member states more closely reflect national political divisions than they do alternatives originating at the European level. Now, I would argue that their argument is not quite as relevant today as it was then. I would say that today elections, European Parliament elections, do also reflect cross-national divisions. There are numerous examples of this. And it's also true that elections today do also reflect genuine European-wide issues. I mean, it's enough to think of things like the Next Generation EU policy with their national recovery and resilience plans, the issue of migration, the war in Ukraine, the Stability and Growth Pact associated with the operation of the Eurozone, and so on. Still, the elections do continue to reflect purely national factors in a number of significant respects. For example, the way in which elections are organised, in terms of the days on which they're held, the electoral systems used, decided at national level. Yes, European-wide parties exist, but they are almost without exception merely federations of national parties. They don't offer membership to individuals in the vast majority of cases, and therefore they have no means of imposing their will on national parties. And thirdly, therefore, the campaigns that take place in each of the member states do tend to remain largely national in focus. By that I mean that the attention of the media and ordinary citizens tends to be on the implications of the elections for domestic politics. If you think of the Italian case, for example, what are the national media talking about? Well, they're not really talking about European issues. They're talking far more, for example, about what the implications of the elections will have for the power and influence of Matteo Salvini in the Meloni government, and therefore what the implications will be for the internal distribution of power within the election, within the national government after the elections. The elections do tend to be very much national in focus, and because of that, citizens tend to think that there is rather little at stake in the European Parliament elections. Nevertheless, as my previous colleague emphasised, the European Parliament does have a primary role in policy making. So the question arises then, why is it that citizens think that there is so little at stake in European Parliament elections? And I think in order to understand that, we have to consider the role of the European Parliament in the making of legislation in Europe. As I'm sure you probably know, legislation is initiated by the European Commission. It's then debated by the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament, and legislation is passed if the two bodies manage to find agreement on a common text. What this highlights is that the European Parliament, first of all, has no power of legislative initiative, and that it does not sustain an executive either. Yeah? By sustaining an executive, I'm thinking of the situation that we have with the Italian Parliament, for instance, yeah, where the Meloni government only remains in office to the extent that it retains the confidence of the Italian Parliament, and the Parliament is accountable, the government is accountable to the Parliament in the sense that if the Parliament passes a vote of no confidence in the government, then it is obliged to resign. Well, things in Europe don't work quite that way. It's true that the Parliament has some means of holding the Commission to account. Yeah, the Commission is obliged to resign if the Parliament, with a two-thirds majority, passes a vote of no confidence in the Commission. But, you know, two-thirds is rather difficult to obtain. So the Commission is not really accountable to the Parliament in the same way that the Italian government or a government in any other parliamentary system is accountable to the legislature responsible for sustaining it. So this means that the Parliament's role in policy making is rather weak, and because it's rather weak, the Parliament has a low level of legitimacy. What I mean by that is that the weakness of the European Parliament means that turnouts tend to be rather low. Because turnouts are rather low, it's difficult for the Parliament to acquire authority. Because it's difficult for it to acquire authority, it's difficult to argue for it to be given more powers. Because it has more powers, people don't think it has much influence, so they don't turn out. So you've got this complete vicious circle involved. The other consequence of the weakness of the European Parliament means that policy making in the European Union is to a very, very significant extent intergovernmental in character. By that I mean it depends to a very significant extent on the degree to which national governments in the Council of the European Union can reach agreement with each other. And therefore that two of the most significant institutions in policy making in Europe do not provide the basis for institutional forms of partisan activity. Yeah? By that I mean the following. If you are opposed to the Meloni government, for instance, yeah, then you can become involved in one of the opposition parties. The Italian Parliament is organized in such a way that it allows for institutionalized forms of partisan expression of opposition to the Meloni government, and it is by virtue of that, to a large extent, that the Meloni government is held accountable. So neither the Commission nor the Council of the European Union provide any basis for the expression of partisan opposition in that sense. And therefore, one of the only real ways in which it is possible to express opposition to the policies of the European Union, yeah, is by opposing the institutions of the European Union itself. And that's why we see that much of the expression of opposition to European policies, such as, for instance, austerity, tends to be expressed by right-wing, sovereigntist, populist parties that are opposed to a very significant extent to the whole European integration project itself. So, so far I've painted a rather dismal picture of the European Parliament. So you might be asking yourself, well, why bother to vote then? Have I not just made the case that, in fact, voting serves very little purpose? Well, I want to argue against that now, because I want to argue that although the European Parliament's role in policy making is not a very strong one, that is not the same as saying that it has no influence at all, or that its influence is not significant. It does have a primary role in policy making because, as I said, it has a power of veto over policy making. Nothing reaches the statute book, if you like, of the European Union without the Parliament say so. There are numerous examples of this. Some very significant examples concern the data protection regulation, which protects all our data, something that gained a very high profile as a result of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. There is the border adjustment tax, which is designed to combat climate change. Recently there has been discussion in the European Parliament about legislation which would ensure fair wages and conditions of labour for those employed in the textile industry, in order to combat the ease with which it's possible to produce fast fashion, which is very dangerous for climate change. And all that sort of thing. There is the minimum wage regulation, which has had a very high profile in, or directive, I should say, passed in 2022. Minimum wages having had a very high profile in Italy recently. So the Parliament does have a very significant role. A second reason why it's important to vote is that EU law has primacy over national law. Yeah? So European law is actually very, very significant. It's important to vote thirdly because voting will make possible a number of democratic changes in the European Union. If we can increase turnout in the European Parliament elections, raising the legitimacy of the European Parliament, therefore making it easier to make the case to give the European Parliament more powers, we'll be able to strive for a more democratic union. And with a more democratic European Union, that in turn will make it easier to make the case for giving the European Union more powers, and therefore to develop a union which has a greater capacity to address a number of major problems which really cannot be addressed, climate change being the most notable example, without international cooperation between states. What kind of changes do we want? Well, one would be to give the European Parliament the power of legislative initiative. Another would be to strengthen the Spitzenkandidaten system. Okay, Spitzenkandidat means lead candidate. This is the practice of European parties of nominating a lead candidate for the position of European President on the assumption that the largest party after the European Parliament elections would be able to place pressure on the European Council to nominate the lead candidate of the largest party to the position of European President, something that happened in 2014 when Jean-Claude Juncker became President of the European Council, something that didn't work out quite so well in 2019 when the lead candidate of the largest party, Manfred Weber, failed to be elected because the European Council was unable to agree on appointing him, and so Ursula von der Leyen was appointed as a compromise candidate. So the idea is, with strengthening the Spitzenkandidaten system, is that you might, for example, introduce a treaty change which would stipulate that the Parliament would have a certain amount of time to agree a majority behind a presidential candidate, and then, okay, if it couldn't agree within a certain period of time, the European Council would be able to appoint a candidate of its choice. But if you strengthened the Spitzenkandidaten system, then what you would do is you would increase the point and purpose of participating in elections. You would make it possible for voters to look at the Spitzenkandidaten and say, for instance, as in the case of Ursula von der Leyen, okay, let's have a look and see to what extent she actually fulfilled the promises she made at the time she was elected in 2019. If we're happy with her, okay, we vote for the European People's Party and increase her chances of becoming the Commission President again. If we're not, okay, we won't vote for that party, yeah? So a very significant democratic change. Another change that we might want to introduce is to make provision for transnational lists, okay? So this is a proposal that's been debated quite extensively in the European Union in recent years, whereby for example, voters would be given 2 votes. They'd be given a vote to vote for their parties in their national context, but in a second vote they would have the opportunity to vote for parties presenting candidates in a single constituency covering the whole of the European Union. And what would that do? That would encourage parties to come together in genuine transnational organizations to put forward genuine European-wide issues. It would result in genuine debate on European-wide issues as opposed to merely national debates. And then what that would do is then increase the sense of people feeling that they are European citizens. And to the extent that people were more likely to feel that they were genuine European citizens, again, it would make democratizing reform easier to achieve. So a final reason to vote then, I think, is to defend democracy. We know that democratic processes are under pressure in many parts of the world, including Europe. If we vote for the European Parliament elections, we increase the legitimacy of the European Parliament and therefore European democracy as a whole. I think I have a very personal reason for wanting to encourage turnout, which is I'm absolutely certain that if turnout is low, then one of the things that will happen is that all the people who are in favour of Brexit in the United Kingdom, they'll then start saying, there you see, nobody really believes in the European Union, it's not worth having, etc., etc., etc. So really turnout is very important. Finally then, what about the outcome and consequences? What is at stake in the elections? Well, I think we might see an increase in turnout. There are various opinion polls suggesting that turnout is likely to be greater this time than it was in 2019. The Eurobarometer that was published in April, for instance, had a finding that 71% of people, when asked, said that they were at least likely to turn out. Of course, being likely to turn out is not the same as actually doing it, but it is 10 percentage points above the proportion that responded in the same way in the run-up to the 2019 election. A second thing that I think we might see, unlike in the past, is that programs and party symbols make more reference to Europe and to genuine European-wide policies in the past. In the past, party programs tended to be very bland documents, yes, because the European Parliament doesn't have the power of legislative initiative because it cannot sustain an executive. Parties tended not to be very explicit or detailed about what they were proposing because they couldn't promise voters that, you know, if they received a significant number of votes, very much that they had stated in their programs would actually happen, yeah? Now programs are much more detailed. A lot of them contain some very interesting policies. If you have a look at this table here, you can see a list of the European parties, the parliamentary groups and the lead candidates. What are some of the policies that they're proposing? Well, the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, for example, is proposing legislation which would encourage countries to sign up to the Istanbul Convention against violence against women. They also want to enshrine in European law a right to abortion. So, you know, there are all kinds of very interesting policies that are being proposed. If we have a look at the party symbols, then there you can see the symbols for the parties being presented in the Italian case. You can see that most of them tend, as I said at the beginning, to be very, very sort of national in focus. So, for instance, the Lega, Fratelli d'Italia, for instance, very little reference to European parties. But on the other hand, other parties do make reference to European parties. If you look at the symbol for Forza Italia, for instance, and the Partito Democratico, there are references there to the Partito Popolare Europeo and the Party of European Socialists in the Democratic Party's case. A third thing we can expect is Ursula von der Leyen standing for the Commission presidency. She's the lead candidate for the European People's Party. As I mentioned earlier, you can have a look at what she promised in 2019, decide if you think she's worth voting for again, on the basis of the extent to which some of her promises have been delivered or not. Some of them have, some of them haven't. You can make up your mind on that. I think we might see a more or less sharp turn to the right. If you have a look at those figures here in that table, what you can see is the percentage seats projected for the European parliamentary groups after the 2024 election. So probably a turn to the right. What does that mean? I think that could mean two things. First of all, it's likely to have an impact on the internal politics of the member states. As I mentioned before, people will be looking to see what the outcome of the elections have to tell us about the distribution of power in the Meloni government. The other thing it might do is have a significant impact, for instance, on environmental policy. Yeah. So if we get a sharp turn to the right, then it is probable that a number of the policies that are designed to combat climate change that were passed with secure majorities in the old parliament, in the new parliament, may struggle to get passed. And given that climate change is one of those areas in which power is shared between the member states and the European Union, it is quite likely that with a sharp turn to the right, the hands of right-wing populist parties that tend not to be very favourably disposed to measures designed to combat climate change will be strengthened, and therefore we might find it more difficult to get adequate climate change measures passed also at the national level. And if you think of the two extreme weather events that took place in Italy last year, in Emilia-Romagna and Tuscany, that might have some very worrying implications for the future of those of us who are living in Italy. So again, the European Parliament elections do have very important implications for all of us in our everyday lives. So please do turn out and vote. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you again for your inspiring speech, I think, at least for me. So now if the public have any questions, okay, you can come.
As I've studied recently, Europe has lost a lot of consensus, so I was wondering if there are any possibilities to gain it back, or the Brexit is just the beginning of a process that will lead to always less consensus for Europe, and it will lead to just lost credibility for Europe.
Thanks very much. Well, I think the way I would answer that question is that, yes, it can be got back. I think in relation to Brexit, for instance, that people tend to say, oh, Brexit is unlikely to be reversed, it's impossible. And when I hear that, I always think of the self-fulfilling prophecy that the more you believe that, the more difficult it becomes, yeah? So what we need to do is to campaign for the measures that are most likely to overcome those objections and the hostility to Europe. And that's why I think it's very, very important to campaign for a more democratic Europe, one that involves more citizens, because then I think it's easier to make the case for Europe and to overcome the hostility. The great slogan in the Brexit campaign they used was "Take back control," and it appealed to this sense that, you know, we're powerless over our own destiny, and we haven't got much control. And so that's why it's so very, very important to try to obtain reforms such that, for example, the Commission is accountable to the European Parliament. So when we go to vote, we can say, no, we don't like what the Commission did last time, or we're very happy with it, and we vote accordingly. And it does bring about real change. So that's, yeah.
Good morning. I have a question. How can we have free information and more narratives in Italy?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How can we have free information?
Free information?
Yes, in our country. That is difficult to talk about many topics that happens in the world.
How can we have free information in our country? Yes, that's a very good question. I suppose I would, well, I'm tempted to sort of throw it back and say, can you tell me to what extent you think information is not free and why that's the case?
Yes, I mean, for example, what happens to the students of Pisa and Turin, the repression of university students in this manifestation, that they went there to express their free think for no war, for save life in Palestine in this case.
Right, okay. Yes, I mean, I think this is a question of internal Italian politics, and what I suppose I'm persuaded by is that whatever else you think of the Meloni government, it's led by a party that I would regard as a populist party, in the sense that it claims to be the most authentic representatives of the people, against what it perceives as a more or less corrupt elite. These elites also make, as far as Fratelli d'Italia is concerned, make their influence felt through the media, and therefore one of the ways in which they attempt to counter these elites is through greater control of the media. I know there's been a lot of discussion in recent days about the government exerting greater control over La Rai, for example. And it feels justified in doing this precisely because it claims to be the most authentic representatives of the people and to have a majority and therefore to be legitimated in that sense. So I suppose the only way in which we can counter these sort of tendencies and the tendencies of parties like the government to legitimize the actions of police forces, even when they act in ways that are very debatable, as in the case of Pisa, is by voting for parties that oppose the Meloni government. I don't know whether that probably doesn't offer a great deal of inspiration, but I guess that's the only way we can do it. But I take the point that you're making, the point that's driving your question. Yes, I see what you mean.
As you said before, like that we lack a sense of democracy and a sense of opposition in Europe. And I mean, in Italy, we are not educated enough, like in schools or in television or on internet, about these kind of topics. Do you think that this is like do it like purposely in order to make us feel like we don't have to know what is happening in Europe? And also, I wanted to ask, what is the best way, in your opinion, to get information and to like educate ourselves in order to vote like consciously, without like being influenced by TV and our politics? So, like, I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense. Okay, so I think there are two questions there. Yes, I think it's very unfortunate that that a larger quantity of information is not available to people in schools about Europe. I often think about this issue in relation to another issue. Yeah, I believe very strongly that our behavior and our ideas in the present, yeah, is very strongly influenced by our conceptions of the past. So let me give you an example of that. Let's take the problem of racism, for instance. Okay. This is my personal view now, yeah? I don't think that we will really overcome the problem of racism today until we do more to educate young people about the way in which the imperialism of the past, the imperialism of the European states, and particularly in my case, Britain, yeah, empires were constructed on the basis of myths of racial superiority. Yeah, when people understand that more clearly, it will be easier to combat racism. Yeah. At the moment, in schools in the United Kingdom, the British Empire and all that implied is just not really talked about at all. People just don't know about it. Yeah, I think if they knew more about it, then racist attitudes and behavior would be very much more contained. So certainly, yes, I think much more needs to be done in schools about Europe. Where you can find information, which I think was your second question, okay, so there are some debates going on with the candidates for Commission President. The last debate was held at the University of Maastricht on the 29th of April. And there will be at least 2 other debates, which you can find online. Just go to the, insert European Parliament elections, and the Wikipedia page will come up, and you'll get the links to the next debates. You'll also get links to the European parties' election programs, which you can read. And as I said before, I think that they're very interesting. They've got some very, very interesting proposals that they are developing, which are very important. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you so much for your speech. I think we can give another round of applause. So now we can go to our next guest, Professor Giannelli.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and for the people who are attending us from their home. I'm very happy to see that the organizers are all women, and that's a very good thing, because I believe that women are better than men in making connection and maintaining connections. And it's a very important thing in the topic that we are going to discuss, because what we are trying to do with the Erasmus program is mainly building a sense of common European citizenship, as Matilde and also Saira already said. And I also want to thank James Newell for introducing very well the topic of the problems of the European Parliament, the lack of power of the European Parliament, and what we could expect from European Parliament. Before going to the slides that I brought, I will try to leave some room for interventions, because I saw that there are many questions that people like to ask. So I will try to put my watch here in order to spend less time in speaking. And I will try to explain, before going to the slides, which is the main topic that I guess we are trying to discuss. That is, could the European Parliament be the core of a new institution building? It was the main task of the European Parliament since the European Parliament became directly elected, because, as you maybe know, in the first step, the European Parliament was only a collection, you could say, a gathering of representatives coming from national parliaments. Then, if I guess well, was in 1979, the first European Parliament elections. Why do you ask to the people to vote for an European Parliament? Because at that time we guessed that we could build common institutions, common political institutions. So how can we do it? First step, what is a national state? What we call a state, not necessarily national, because we have examples of states that are not at national level, that are small states, like, for example, Greek cities, or ancient cities, or old empires that we now don't call state, but, for example, the Romans called themselves res publica. That means things that belongs to everybody. It's another way to call the state. State is a French word, as you know, typical of national state. But we are building something different from national state. Well, so which is traditionally, which are the function of a nation, of a state? The first, as you know, is taxation. Why is taxation? Because without taxes, you cannot do anything in common. So even if you decide to build an association for doing something like this association, you need some kind of resource. So, or you have an external source of resources, but in that case, you depend on the external source. And this is, unfortunately, the case for European Union that has a part of their own resourcing coming from taxation of the duty from the market, import-export duties, but most of the money come from national states. So, if you consider that Parliament, in the first step, began their role in order to decide about the taxation, no taxation without representation, as the British used to say, and the Americans took that slogan to say, okay, so we want to decide by ourselves or to participate to the London Parliament, and then they decide to make their own parliament. So the parliament has a lot to do with taxation. And this is the first thing that the European Parliament somehow lacks. Has power in order to decide about resources, but what we should build would be a kind of European taxation system. That would be a very good step in order to empower the parliament and the need of a common parliament in order to decide what we do. Then there is another important role of the national parliament, as we know, that is the protection of the civil rights. That is also a typical British achievement, but not only. And it's written in our constitution. It's written also in the Declaration of the Rights that now, as the first step, as you know, was only a declaration. Now is incorporated into the European law, so we have an European guarantee of the civil rights. So that's why it's so important that in the case in which there are infractions, in which these civil rights are not respected in one of our member states, European Union act in order to restore these rights. This is for the case, for example, this is a typical case that has taken a lot of space in newspaper of our citizen in Hungary, no? Where we saw the conditions of her detection. But I think this is only one small single example. It's very important that in the European Union and in the European Parliament as well, we put a strong light on the respect of civil rights. Then, historically, there is another function that is typical of the states, that is defense against external threat, aggression. And now we have a situation in Europe that is something that we could not imagine a few years ago, because we have a war. We have two wars very close, but one especially is not only close, but also threatening somehow the most of the European states, of the European citizens feel somehow under threat, which is the risk, the biggest risk of this situation is the risk that every member state will build its own security, its own defense, spending maybe much more money on military equipment and defense without a European project, without a European community of defense. Especially now that we are not, or we don't know if we are still under the protection, under the umbrella, very interested protection of the United States, under which we decided not to delegate somehow our defense. It's a very bad thing if single member state decide to invest a lot in military, one in not coordinated with the other, because it's the things that we already saw in the past. We are in the continent in which more wars has been done during a lot of centuries. We are the civilization of war. We have to remember that. Europeans are the civilization of wars. We made wars during all the time of our history, except during the 19th, the British century, during which we much prefer to do wars outside Europe than inside Europe. But then we began making war in the 20th century. So it would be a very bad thing if we begin to rebuild our national security from the national point of view. This is a thing on which we have to put a lot of attention. I mean, as citizens and as voters. Which are the rationalities of the European Union that we know? At this moment, there are three main rationalities inside the European Union. One is technical. A lot of policy making and legislation at the European Union is considered as technical, and that's why, just to answer to a question, it's so difficult to have the information. There are a lot of sources of technical information about legislative processes and what are made at the European Union level, but if you consider that even at the national level people don't really know what happens in Parliament, because if you read the newspaper you always read the same declaration of the politicians, and the people don't really know what our national government do, because we only see what Berlusconi used to call the teatrino della politica, the theater of politics. But you have to read a technical newspaper like Sole 24 Ore in Italy to understand what is the legislative production and the policy making in your country. Considering that in European Parliament and European institutions, the technicalities are even more complex because there is, and this is the second rationality, negotiation, continuous and very long negotiation, and a very tune making of interest mediation among different levels of interest, national interest, but also corporate interest and groups, in interest groups, and so on. So what comes out from this policy making is a very complex production of policies, and only the people who have technicalities, skills for specific fields really understand something. So you have, for example, now I'm trying to study European Artificial Intelligence Act of the European Parliament. I don't know if you had a look. The Act of the Parliament is a 200 pages act, and I'm trying to understand exactly what is inside. Fortunately, and I give you this suggestion, like in every kind of European documents, you have a summary of the topics of this act, but the summary is 25 pages. So, just to make you understand, you spend 1 month just to understand what they are trying to do. So, that's make you understand why it's so difficult, because there is a technical knowledge and a strong mediation. Then there is the problem that is core to what we are speaking about, that is European Parliament, that is what we call majoritarian representation, that is typical of the national parliament, in which you have a majority and you have an opposition. Already James Newell made us stress the thing, very important, that in this moment you don't have a real opposition in the party, and that's why, as Jim said, you have the opposition outside the European Union, against the European Union. The thing that in national states is very small. There are only anarchists that are against institutions, but usually opposition, when parliament is correctly representative, so no too majoritarian, is represented in parliament. Why? This is not the case for European Parliament. At least there is not a clear opposition. There are single opposition to single issues. That's typical of what we call the negotiation and interest representation. So what we should need is first a translational representation, some kind of majoritarian rule in parliament in order to make parliament more crucial. And we need to make parliament, European Parliament, more crucial if we want that the European Union will be not only the place for representation of national governments, but representation for citizens. I guess that is a good thing that parties that used to be very Eurosceptical in this moment are now saying that they are going to European Parliament in order to change the Europe. Because that would be an inside parliament process of policy making. I'm not sure that that would happen, but at least it's much better if they oppose the things in parliament that they just try to delegitimate the parliament. Now, let's have a look at the slides. Okay, here is just representation of one of the main problems in the European Union, and that there is a core periphery, but there is no time to go deep into it because I want to leave some space for questions. In general, how do you have... In general, do you have a very positive, fairly positive, neutral, fairly negative, or very negative image of European Parliament? As you see, there is not a majoritarian negative opinion about the European Parliament. The big problem is there is a large share of people who, they say they are neutral, very probably they don't have an opinion. So they say they are neutral, not to say I don't know, but unfortunately this is a large share of people. As you see, the young people but studying are somehow young adults are more in favor of European Parliament than old people or very young people. Very young people maybe are not relevant. It's possible they don't have still a position. But as you see, old people, as we also saw in Brexit, in the case of Brexit, no, in which most of the young people were in favor of Remain, and especially in urban areas, especially in London, but not only, and the people who felt more marginalized somehow from the social point of view were more in favor of leaving, because that's a very important thing. What the people expect to collective institution is protection. So there was a feeling of, maybe wrong, but there was a feeling of a part of the British population that they could be better protected by the national parliament, the national institution, than by the European institution. So I guess that this feeling in the European Union is somehow changed maybe after the COVID outbreak, because during the pandemic, after the pandemic, fortunately, the European Union took the initiative of some kind of social protection. First, large, but people don't know, but the first step was 500 billions of euros for social fundings, and then what we call the Next Generation EU. Now we are trying to spend. So it's very important that the European Union is felt as a kind of protection against risks. What do the people expect? Would you personally like to see European Parliament play a more important role? As you see, and that's the connection with my introduction, a lot of people, the majority of people would like to see a more important role of the European Parliament. If you read that in another way, you could also think that most of the people would like that the European Union, because of course they think European Parliament as the representation of the people inside the European institutions. So it's very important that there is a majority thinking that. It's also a large part that thinks that they would prefer a less important role, but they are just a large majority. Still, here is the same things. As you see, there is much more consensus for the European Parliament, for an enlargement of the competencies of the European Parliament among the people who are studying and young. But as you see, also is important that the people who say that they follow what happens at European level with the sources that they have, they are more in favor. So it's very probably that a lot of the people who are against giving more powers to the European power have some kind of prejudice, some kind of negative judgment not based on knowledge, but based on prejudice. Please tell how important or not if you're personally to vote for the European election. As you see, a lot of person wants to say that it's important to vote for European election. That's why it's important to see if the people will go to the polls. It's true there is a long debate, a lot of literature about the fact that it's not always true that in the democracies like the American one, for example, in which there are a few people going to the polls, that means that democracy has little legitimacy. The topic is very big, but let's put aside. But in any case, is relevant to see, for example, that Eastern European countries, in many cases, have a small participation to the polls. Maybe because they cannot yet, they figure out European Union as a place for prosperity, for economic prosperity, not yet as a common destiny for the people, as long as I understood. National elections are important for more people, of course. Most of the people still think that the primary election is national election, and then, as James Newell said, that that the European elections are a secondary election. So we have to try to reverse this idea through the building of institutions that will really protect the citizens in their daily life. And that's what the people ask. You see, citizens' priority, which of the following topics should be discussed as a matter of priority during the electoral campaign? And if you read this list, you understand that is a typical request, typical demand for more protection, because it's a protection against, they ask protection against poverty and social exclusion, public health, so healthcare system, support the economy and creation of jobs, defense and security. You see, very relevant topics, very crucial topics that are typical of the national state policy making, and people, at least most of the people, asked European Parliament to discuss of this topic. That means that they want some kind of European policy making on these issues. And most of these issues are considered typical national issues, but if you read this poll, you understand that European seems ready to accept that European Union must play a role on all these topics. I stop here and I ask for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Wonderful speech, by the way. Thank you very much. So if some of you has a question, like as we did, you come here and put your question. Also you guys, if you want. No? Okay. Carola, thank you. Also online, I am with the streaming, so I can read you. Please write on a comment. Thank you, Carola. You go.
Okay, there's a lack of communication and transparency in communication between your parliament and citizen. But as we see, and it's evidence that the youngest population is the one that is more trustful and interested in staying in Europe and stay in contact with Europe. So how we can explain, and how would you explain, this trust from the youngest population, despite the fact that there isn't a clear communication and transparent one that is clear enough to understand what is really doing the Parliament and what is really happening around Europe? I don't know if the question is clear enough.
Thank you. I don't know if these things has a lot to do with information. We should go much deeper with questions about the people. What I know is that usually young people is more looking forward than the old people and much less scared by what is new. You can see it very clearly with migrants, for example. The people who feel scared by migrants are usually old or very old people. Even most of them say that they threaten our jobs even if they are retired, they are in pensions. So which kind of jobs are you speaking? Maybe migrants could pay your pension if they come, but they are scared. We saw that very clearly also in the British case of Brexit, no? The people scared by the people coming from Eastern Europe to make professions in Great Britain. So young people usually are more looking forward, more open to new institutions, and more open also to innovative solutions. While as long as you get older, unfortunately that maybe will happen also to you, I don't know, I hope not, you begin to be more conservative and scared by anything that is outside your sphere of experience. Young people like to travel a lot. It would be very interesting, for example, to look in the polls if the people who travel a lot around Europe, also old people who travel a lot, there are many, are much more in favor, very probably, to European institutions' empowerment than to the people who always live here in the same place and don't know much about other countries. Young people maybe are influenced by what they read or what they know, but maybe more are influenced by what they feel. And young people, fortunately, usually have a much more positive thinking than old people.
Thank you.
I'm going to start by saying I'm ignorant on so much. I don't really know much, but it's clear that you would like to see a larger role of the European Union and how it plays the government or whatever. In an ideal world, in your mind, where would that limit be on the amount of control that the European Union has over other countries? And I suppose I would say, is there a limitation in your eyes as to how well the European Union can govern countries which it's not, like maybe doesn't understand totally about the inner workings of that country? Does that make any sense?
But the first thing is that I'm not speaking about extending. First step would be extending the role of the parliament, because the parliament is the place in which you could play a transnational representation, while in the European Union you have already a very strong representation of the member state in the European Council and in the European Council of Ministers, just to make it so, the summit of the chief of states and the traditional European Council in which they decide, which is a legislative body, chamber. You remember that the European Union has two legislative chambers. One is the European Council, in which there are the member states, and the other one is the European Parliament. So what I would like, and what maybe also the people who answer to this question would like, is to have a stronger representation of the people inside European institutions. Then, of course, if you begin to have more policy makings in this area for protection of the people who are represented in the parliament, you also would need more resources in order to provide these kinds of protection. For example, a very basic example. Why don't we try to start to test a kind of protection for unemployed, an European support for unemployed? That means some money that to give to unemployed people under the condition that must be decided altogether, so that you're not spending your time at home doing nothing, but you're looking for a job. During the time by which you're looking for a job, European institution can provide you a support, an economic support, in order to fill the time during from the job that you lost and the new job that you got. This is a typical national support that is very different from one place to another. For example, in Denmark, it's a very good support. In Italy, it's a very, very small support and very with a lot of lags. So why don't we try to test a kind of European measure that could be a kind of economic European citizenship for all unemployed? That would be a kind of protection that would not damage the member state power. That would help the people, in my opinion. What do you think?
I don't really know, but thank you.
Thank you, Rob. So we have, you have a question as well? Yeah, all right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, please.
Thank you for the wonderful speech. I have a curiosity or a question, I don't know. why there is a link between a relationship between states and European Parliament so strong that it's impossible to decide with the European mind and not the state's mind. Yeah, the European think.
You mean that we should have a European kingship somehow? Sovereignty?
Yeah.
Yes, already there is a European sovereignty. As you, for example, as Jim told, remember that European legislation in the fields in which Europe has been given sovereignty by member state is over our national legislation. So the problem is how to manage this sovereignty. Until now, the main actors in this role have been member states. This is a typical case, for example, for migration policies. It's quite a long time that I hear politicians, national politicians say Europe does nothing for migrant policies. But the truth is that European member states never gave the powers for managing migration at the European level. Because managing migration is not to patrol the Mediterranean Sea. This is not migration policies. Migration policies means how many migrants do we need for our job markets? How can we select the people who want to come in Europe? For example, there are many cases of specific selection. In Germany, they are very able to select the people they need for the jobs they have free for their economy. So all this kind of, when you have a person in the country, how can we manage this person? How can give this person the chance to have a job in case we want to integrate this person? All these things are managing migration. Not the policy migration does not mean how to stop the people crossing the Mediterranean. This is just patrol, you could say, control policy. But European member states never gave this. And this is a thing that we also can see in many other things. Healthcare, when there was the pandemic, there was not a common healthcare policy, of course, because we never gave European Union competence for healthcare policies. Energy, we had the big problem when the Russian invaded Ukraine with the Russian gas and oil. But there was not an European policy making for energy because the European member state never wanted to give powers to the European Union. So the problem is this difficulty of the politicians of the national member state to give powers to the European level because, of course, the problem for them is not an ideological problem. The problems are two. First, that they lose some part of the powers that they have at the national level. First problem. Second problem is how can we sell to our voters this new policy? This is the case, for example, for pandemic, in which Angela Merkel and Macron were able to sell to their voters the need for a pandemic response to the pandemic shock at European level, because that could be accepted by their voters. So the problem are how can we deliver more power to the European Union?
Thank you so much.
There are more questions online? Nope. So thank you, Professor. We're done with the questions.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we are almost coming to an end to this conference, but before we leave, we have prepared a small initiative. We collected some pictures from some of the Erasmus from Urbino who went to a period of mobility abroad, and some international students who came to Urbino to do their Erasmus here. And we create a presentation containing all these pictures, so all the stories and the memories of these people. And we do this exhibition every year, and it's great and kind of emotional to see how the Erasmus generation grows year by year. And before playing the video, I would like to thank again all the speakers who are here today, and all of you who came. And I want to also thank Saira. And remember to vote the 8th and the 9th of June. And I don't know if Saira wants to say something before playing the video.
Joking. So, we have come to the end of this day, and I would also like to thank all the speakers who have spoken today. I thank all the institutions who opened the conference, Luca Polidori, who works behind the scenes and allowed the conference to be streamed. Thanks to our university, to the International Erasmus Office, and to the human beings that support and help us to spread our mission, student helping students. I always thought that when you strongly believe in something, it always opens a marvelous world of opportunities in front of you. Thanks. Now, I want to receive a loudly applause for the greetings that I will do like in 1 minute. Are you ready? Carichi? Bene. Thanks to the students of the Liceo delle Scienze Umane, Laurana Baldi, and thanks to her professor. Thanks to Radio Urca, whom also helped us to sponsor this event. Bravo, mi piace. Bravo. Thanks to the Erasmus students, it doesn't matter if you are from Europe or not. Wait. You are the heart of our commitment, the reason why we love our association, and the center of our effort. Okay, getting emotional. Last but not least, to our association. I can do it. I love you all. Thanks a lot for your effort. With the time passing by, we have grown up together, and it's not hard for me to say that without the help of each of you, this couldn't be possible. You are amazing and special, and a small recommendation from the President. Never stop learning and always believe in yourself. Grazie mille a tutti. Now we go. Enjoy the presentation. I hope it's working. You can sing a song on your head, so it will be much easier. Thanks again, and before saying definitely goodbye, I would like to make a group picture. I don't know if we fit in, but can we do it there? With also the students from the Liceo? Perfect, so please, now you can be with us here. And thank you so much for the people at home, bye, I love you, ciao. Sì, facciamolo un applauso.